Facts Verse presents. School officials are throwing out every world map for one controversial purpose. Maps have been an essential part of our lives for centuries. The first map that we had was in the stars. The diagrams of the constellations helped us to track the passage of our seasons. Ancient civilizations began using mapping techniques to identify cities and plots of land. It was essential in preventing ownership disputes. One of the oldest maps in existence is a stone table that shows a plot of land in the Babylonian city of Nippur. During the Age of Exploration, maps were relied upon to navigate oceans and continents. The discoveries that were made along the way helped to develop the maps that we have today, and also developed cartography as a science. At this point, the interest in map-making had grown exponentially. There were many perspectives regarding what the layout of the Earth really looked like, but nobody could be sure whose version was the most accurate. Gerardus Mercator was a cartographer with a lifetime of mapping experience. In 1569, he was sure that his map was the closest thing to what the world really looked like. His map was called the Mercator Projection, and it maintained a constant width by drawing vertical meridians and horizontal parallels. It was essential in helping sailors, and it improved the way that we circumnavigated the oceans at that time. At first, the adoption of the Mercator was slow. However, by the end of the 17th century, it was the most widely used map in the world. Because exploration was flourishing, cartographers were sure that they finally had a grasp of what the world really looked like. Over time, Mercator's map was adopted as the official map of the world. In schools, teachers use pull-down maps of the world for their students to see, and that is Mercator's version. It's printed on pamphlets, on globes, and even the maps used by GPS navigation systems are Mercator projections. Unfortunately, the Mercator projection has now been found to be wrong. For centuries, this has been our view of the world, and it's been a lie. People are so sure the map is inaccurate now that people are ignoring it. School officials are throwing out every world map for a very controversial purpose. The reason that the map is considered to be wrong is that it lays out our three-dimensional world into a two-dimensional rectangle, which significantly distorts the size of our continents. That's especially true with land masses that are farther from the equator, like Greenland. According to Mercator's map, Greenland is as big as Africa, almost making Greenland its own continent. However, Greenland may be the world's largest island, but it's only 1/14th the size of Africa. It's even smaller than the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The fact that Greenland looks the same size as Africa on a map is very misleading. Australia has the opposite problem. It appears smaller than the United States and most European countries on a map. In reality, Australia dwarfs the United States and almost every country in Europe. Many people believe that these inaccuracies were simply a miscalculation. However, there were some who believed that Mercator's distortions were intentional. During the early times of map-making, colonialism had a significant influence. Back then, size equaled power, and because of that, European mapmakers distorted the projections to make dominant countries look larger, and colonial territories like India and Africa look much smaller. Africa had a colonial history, and it appears smaller than most places on the map. In reality, you could fit China, Japan, and the United States and most of Europe within Africa's borders. That's a pretty big mistake to make, which is why many believe now that Mercator did this intentionally. As more and more people took notice of the Mercator map's shortcomings, efforts are now being made to create something more accurate. Most schools in Boston have already tossed out their old maps in favor of the Gall-Peterson projection. It was created by James Gall, and it shows the size of the landmasses relative to each other. The map might look a little bit odd, but it does give us a more accurate idea of how large the continents really are. Since the Gall-Peterson projection has been introduced, Mercator's map is being phased out. Teachers want to show their students the continents in their correct sizes rather than using Mercator's version, where he wanted people to believe that certain areas were larger for power and wealth. Since colonialism no longer exists and size does not equal strength, there's no reason to falsify the sizes of our continents. Teachers want students to understand what the world really looks like as opposed to what Mercator wanted people to think the world looked like. Did this new map surprise you? Tell us in the comments and subscribe for more.